It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. It is great to have everybody joining us here today. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 here on Sirius XM a big part of your workday, and a big shout out to everybody also listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. You heard the cheers from the crowd here today. We are broadcasting live from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference in Calgary, Alberta. Big thanks to all the organizers and the partner organizations for inviting Canada's only national ag radio show to this event. This is the congregation, the meeting, the networking place for the Canadian beef industry that faces a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of challenges and adversity as well, which is very, very well documented. And speaking of adversity and things like that, we are going to be focusing on that here today. We've got a great set of guests. We're going to talk about mistakes, being challenged by adversity, how it makes us stronger in the long run, and how do we make sure that we build that resilience into our farm business. Our guests today are Todd Millar. He is CEO of TEC Canada, based out of Calgary here. TEC Canada is a very, very unique company in terms of helping business owners across the country from a whole bunch of different industries. He's going to apply some of the knowledge and skills that they try to develop in their members here with us here today. Our panelists will be Andrea Stroeve-Sawa, Brian Thomas, and Ray Bucknell. So it's going to be a lot of fun here today on the program. If you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms. There's 1,000 of them these days. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. I'm sure I'm missing something. We are Real Agriculture on all of those. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. You know, speaking of adversity and today's focus on that, in our farming and ranching businesses, there is no shortage of it. We all know in the beef industry, there is a plethora of adversarial variables chasing us down truly on a daily basis. But the thing to remember is not all adversity is bad. In fact, there is growth in confronting adversity and seeing the other side of it. Zig Ziglar, who's a very, very famous management and business guru, wrote, "Sometimes adversity is what you need to face in order to become successful." Kind of think of it like a muscle. You know, when you work out, and I know some of you do, when you do a bicep curl, you're pushing the muscle. You're putting it through strain, and as you break down those muscular fibers, doing those curls, you're sore the next day. But that's actually a good thing. Those fibers build back stronger and larger as you repeat the process over and over and over again in the coming weeks. But keep in mind, if you push that bicep too much and you tear the bicep muscle like I did a couple months ago, you don't want to do that. It's very, very painful. It makes you quit working out the muscle, and you have to rest so it heals, and then you go through a period where you feel weaker than you did when you first started. Personally and for our businesses, adversity makes us stronger, but it can break us if the load is too much. The thing we got to remember, it's how we prepare and handle and react to that adversity that matters in the short and the long term. I'm really looking forward to today's show. And without any further ado, let's take a quick break, and we'll get started with today's program here at the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. You're listening to RealAg Radio on Rural Radio 147.
Does your end stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to get your crop off to a great start and a strong finish. Whether you're growing chickpeas, faba beans, lentils, or peas, you'll get all the latest and best agronomic information at PulseSchool.com. A library of top-notch agronomy videos from industry experts available on demand at your fingertips. Visit the Pulse School, brought to you by BASF on RealAgriculture.com.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, broadcasting from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference here in Calgary, Alberta. It is great to see all the familiar faces and new friends out here in the audience. I had a lot of people come up and say, hey, listen to the show. Somebody even said they got Sirius XM now in the feed truck. They had pimped out the feed truck and they got Sirius in the feed truck, so they were all excited. So it is great to have everybody here with us for this unique opportunity. I want to bring in our first guest. It is Todd Millar. He is CEO of TEC Canada, based in Calgary, Alberta. Hey, Todd, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Shaun, pleasure to be here.
Okay, so Todd, tell us, first of all, what is TEC Canada? What does it do?
Sure. So unlike the acronym of potentially getting confused as a technology company, TEC Canada is the executive committee. And in essence, what we are is a peer-to-peer mentoring organization that coaches over 2,000 members coast to coast across Canada through men and women that we call chairs. We have 120 of them across Canada that, in essence, do facilitation of group meetings that happen monthly, as well as one-to-one coaching with every one of our members. And every industry that you can imagine is part of our membership.
So we're talking here today about adversity.
Yeah.
In your mind, in the businesses that you've worked with across this country, how important is adversity in a business?
Yeah, I think it's a make or break. And I think everyone in your audience today and all your listeners have faced varying degrees of adversity. You know, I thought about your topic and your dialogue that you shared with me that we were going to chat a little bit about this morning. And I couldn't help but resist the temptation to bring you a gift. So I brought you a gift.
You brought me a gift?
I brought you a gift.
Well, what is the gift?
So in essence, just after what I'll call the first wave of the exit of the pandemic, of course, our leaders across Canada were all facing adversity, as all of us were during the pandemic. And our members were, and our chairs were thinking, a model that's built around face-to-face interaction, how are we going to do this? So adversity was top of mind for us. Well, Marcus Aurelius, if folks who remember Marcus Aurelius, and through one model that I follow on a regular basis, the Stoics, of course, they have these coins, and this is my gift to you. And this particular coin is Amor Fati, right? Love of fate is, of course, the Latin meaning. And on the back of the coin is the phrase from Marcus Aurelius, which I think is so appropriate to adversity. Not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it. And to me, that's the whole essence behind adversity, is to treat it like fire, like a fuel, to find out how do we capitalize on the adversity that we're facing. So that's my gift to you, Shaun.
Thank you very much. I've actually never had a panelist bring me a gift, so thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
A new beginning.
Okay, so talk about how, because there's adversity where I can't do this anymore. Like I'm not sure I want to be doing this job or want to be in this industry. But then there's also adversity that kind of we talk. We had Brian Burke here earlier on the conference, and he talks about adversity building character and those kinds of things. So where is that line?
Yeah, again, that's what we face in our organization on a regular basis, and I've certainly faced it. Prior to being the CEO of TEC Canada, I was a CEO for 3 different organizations, large organizations, and we all feel it. We all feel adversity, all face adversity on a regular basis. So, to me, again, the coin embodies the thinking that I embrace, and certainly we encourage our members to embrace, is that it's not defeat. You take on adversity as this is an opportunity, right? So no matter what we're facing, you pick on examples, technology in your industry, and when I think about ranching and agriculture these days, I mean, technology is coming at you in waves, in terms of new ways of dealing with different things. Now, you could treat that like adversity, like most industries. They could treat that as, well, that's defeat.
Push back.
I'm going to push back. I'm going to surrender to that. Or you could embrace it and look at it as to say, okay, well, look, how do we take that and thread it into the way that we've historically done things and make it even better? And, of course, that's the mindset, because that's really what that is. Yeah. It's a mindset of being, which is challenging. It's easy for me to sit here beside you, Shaun, and talk about this, but it really is it's a mindset. It's a shift. And I think certainly we've experienced it, when our members embrace that type of mindset, then good things start to happen on a compound basis.
I think a lot of times we talk about adversity, we talk about economic adversity, right? Sure. But there's other kinds too. There's a lot of people here are running family businesses. Family can create sure. Adversity. We could have other things happening that are, the weather. Obviously, the drought and heat is definitely something that's really impacted some of the pasture quality in different parts of Canada as well. So it feels like this can kind of be a building thing, and you got to kind of, attitude plays such a big role in how you deal with it.
Well, no question. Your frame. Well, funny you mentioned, attitude. Years ago, a psychologist was working with us in our organization and talking about the importance of having an attitude of gratitude, right? And some of you may be familiar with this, but in essence, it's waking up every morning. And so this is a discipline that we put in place, and I'm not a psychologist, but in fairness, this approach of mindset, again, as it relates to attitude and specifically having an attitude of gratitude, here's the steps, right? So it's basically taking a discipline within 30 days, and again, this is proven inside of the psychologist world, that in 30 days, if you do this every single morning with discipline, you will change your mindset and embrace a world of gratitude. And that is taking 5 things every morning before you get out of bed, and ideally writing it down on a Post-it note, right? The hand to piece of paper is very important in this exercise, and literally saying, what are the 5 things that I'm grateful for? And starting every single day with that mindset, and in the end of 30 days, you have rewired the brain. Now, again, you can go and Google that and check it all out, but it's something that I know our members embrace about, I've got to approach how I do business, because there are all kinds of challenges, not just economic challenges. There's the environmental issues, there's people issues as you describe. We always talk about this in our environment, that there are only 2 issues in business. One of them is people, and the other one's money, right? Now, I understand those are lofty topics, but we break those down to try to figure out how do you overcome them, and part of that overcoming is attitude, no question.
When you do some research on doing those self-reflections in terms of the environment in your business that you're dealing with, a lot of what you read says go to that grateful. What is the connection there between gratitude, attitude, and being able to push through adversity? Why are those 3 so connected?
Well, I guess that this is one of these examples that I would draw as to the scenario that we've all had in life. I mean, we've all showed up to an event, an activity or something, and where you just knew, you got your gut check going, right? And you're thinking, I don't think I want to be here. No, I think that's actually a culture experience that you're having. And I've talked about this before, Shaun, that culture, in my opinion, is not really a thing. It's a byproduct of the behaviors that are associated with core values. So if you're around individuals that are like-minded individuals, that doesn't mean the same, just like-minded individuals with similar core values, presumably we all think of ourselves as having great attitudes, and we want to be positive thinkers, and we want to face adversity and overcome it. All those things everyone would nod their heads to that, right? And so if you're in a room where like-minded individuals are there, there's going to be a human connection taking place. And I think that that actually spills off into your organizations. Think about leading people inside of your organization. I think leadership is defined as influencing outcomes. So if you're the leader and you're not displaying gratitude, the right attitude, overcoming the adversity, there's no chance that the men and women around you are going to be following they're not going to be leading with that if you're not displaying it.
That's why conferences like this are so important, because it allows you to get outside of your, past your farm gate, the ranch driveway, and get out and network and talk to people that are probably going through some of the same challenges within your industry. Now, to build on that, if you really want to have a win, also work at talking to some business owners that maybe are outside of the industry as well.
Even better, and obviously conferences like this are phenomenal. I mean, as you point out, getting away from the day-to-day business, whatever that business is, and being around like-minded individuals to have conversation and think a little bit differently. And as you say, Shaun, take that one step further. How do you find a place where you can go and have even more diversity for challenging yourself, challenging others? Because I do think that that's part of our purpose in life is, supporting you as much as you're supporting me, and thinking about that in the context of overcoming things that are really complex and important. And I think those two key words are the reason for why you're all here today. You're looking to solve or tackle issues or get new ideas about complex and important issues. I mean, all that gut check stuff, you didn't need to come here to do that. Right? I mean, you go to events, you go to activities because you're looking for, what am I really faced with in the biggest way, whether it's under the terminology of adversity or an attitude issue, complex and important, right?
So if we know adversity can be good for us and it can make us stronger and better, citizens, business owners, managers, why do people avoid it so much? Think about as a parent. Right, we've got I think a real issue right now where parents don't want to put their kids through any sort of adversarial situation whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we're not learning.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, when we deal with members, there'll be an emotional attachment. I mean, I'm not going to drift into the parenting. My wife did a great job of raising our two kids. But when I think about, what you're really touching on is I think it's conflict. And what we do in our environment is really encourage people to embrace conflict, and that's really adversity. So if you wanted to attach another word to it. But most people, and probably most of our audience today, have been raised in the framework that I don't want to deal with conflict. Right? I mean, and often I'll ask an audience like this, put up your hand if you like conflict before a preamble like we're having, and nobody puts up their hand. They don't want.
Maybe Brian Burke earlier.
Brian Burke might, right? That's right. Yeah. And why you put me off to Brian Burke? I mean, come on, tough act to follow. But I think it is about conflict. I mean, it's you could maybe synonymous with adversity, right? I mean, the reason why I don't want to tackle adversity, the reason why I don't want to step outside my traditional box, the reason why I don't want to change is that's going to involve something in the tune of conflict. And I would turn to you and say, look, there's destructive conflict and there's constructive conflict. And my encouragement to you would be to say, look, I'm going to be 100% engaging in a constructive conflict environment. There's Patrick Lenciano, if you've done some reading on his work, he talks about the conflict continuum, right? And he talks about this element of over here you're in Niceville, and that's where most of us live. We don't want conflict, so we're just going to be nice and we're going to have conversations with one another. And the reason for that is that way over here, that's hell. Right? And we know that if we keep moving this way, eventually we're going to be in arguments and yelling at each other, and none of us want to be there. So the real message behind Patrick's work is to stay right here in what he calls the sweet spot, right in the middle, where you can work towards to that place where you can have really engaging conversations and deal with adversity.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people thinking about some of their family business discussions, and it'd be interesting to see how everybody fits on the pendulum between polite and the hell you describe it at times, probably depending on the situation. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio at the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. Todd's going to stick around for one more segment, and then we'll get into our panel. You're listening to RealAg Radio on Rural Radio 147.
there's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup, weed control, field trial results, yield strategies, and so much more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF, Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from realagriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest podcast today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, broadcasting here from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference in Calgary, Alberta. And we're talking right now to Todd Millar. He is CEO of TEC Canada. Today's show is all about adversity and making mistakes and all the things that go around that and trying to be better business leaders here in the agricultural community. Todd, I want to hit on decision making.
Sure.
Okay. Now, in situations of adversity, a lot of times we have to make a really key decision, a decision that may not be a small one, a decision that may sort of set our farm business, our ranching business on a path, one way, sort of a fork in the road, so to speak.
Sure.
A lot of times when we think about, that was a good decision or that was a bad decision, we focus on the outcome and not the process of what led to that decision in the first place. What are some suggestions you have in terms of making good decisions during very stressful times?
Yeah, it's well, we all want to get to the answer, right? And I think that's human nature. We hear adversity, we hear conflict, we hear a bit of a challenge, and we immediately think, well, let's just figure this out and move on. And some of that's personality, and in terms of how you show up at the table. But the process that certainly I subscribe to, and this comes from the model that I'm now heavily involved with, that comes from, by the way, 37 years this business has been around, so a lot of smarter guys than I have contributed in founding the model. But here's a statement that I'd make to you, Shaun. The pre-existing solution to all problems lies within the questions you ask. Pre-existing solution to all problems lies within the questions you ask. So in essence, if you can find yourself in a room with like-minded individuals, regardless of industry, so regardless of whether you're in the same industry, perhaps that would, you could certainly use it within the same industry, but regardless of where you're at, the process to follow is to really say, how do I? So answer that question. How do I do this? And state that very, very clearly. Give a little bit of background so that everyone around the table can kind of understand, what the essence of the issue is, and state why it's important. Make sure that everyone has a vested interest in just what you're trying to accomplish, and then have the table, in this case, in this example, ask questions. The pre-existing solution to all problems lies within the questions that come from around the table. You'll ultimately get to a place, and we've watched this in our model for decades, where men and women come together, like-minded individuals, same rules that we shared earlier on, and start probing each other and really asking really deep questions, and all of a sudden, an answer prevails.
I think that's why in the most stressful of times, when your business is going through the most adversity, it is important to be able to have discussions within the business unit, but also have support networks outside of the business that are that secondary eye. Absolutely. To provide some real honest feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's lonely. They say that, it's lonely at the top, right? As a CEO, as a business owner, an entrepreneur, it's lonely. You don't have to be alone. I mean, there are all kinds of, another, I guess, key learning that I've had in particular in the last 15 years of doing this work, a little bit more than 15, I guess now. But for many, many years as a CEO running billion-dollar organizations, I thought I had to have all the answers. I thought I had to, I've got to be on my own. I got to go to the board and I've got to have the answers. I got to go to the shareholders. I got to have the answers. The reality is you don't. You don't have to have the answers. And I think if we really think about that, we all subscribe to that way of thinking. The reality that my key learning is that ask for help. And when you actually ask for help amongst like-minded individuals, men and women that care, whether that be in your industry or outside your industry, people want to help.
It's interesting. I got a text this morning from a friend who is asking a business question. And it would have been very easy for me to say, yeah, I think it's going to be okay. But I didn't. I said, dude, you're off your rocker. What are you doing? Like you're trying to do X and you really want Y, because we've talked about this before. Right. And he was like, you know what? You're right. What am I doing? And so there was that's actually being helpful to not just say what's easy, but to actually provide that honest, respectful feedback to that friend on that business issue.
And then package it up with accountability, right? That's the other element inside of this. Like, we're facing adversity, we're challenging one another, we're trying to find solutions to what's going on, but then all of a sudden to kind of pull it together with an accountability model. In other words, follow up with your friend, right? Yep. And say, so how did you do with my suggestion?
Okay, before I let you go, I want to ask you, what is the worst business decision? You don't need to tell all your worst life decision. We're getting a little too personal here. What is the worst business decision that you've ever made that led to, through a point of adversity?
You want to end on my worst decision?
Why not? Yeah.
When I think back, I had, as I said, I went through a multitude of organizations as CEO and a business leader of different organizations. We had all kinds of issues and their challenges and what have you. Ultimately, when I became a bit of a serial entrepreneur and started to, invest in organizations and, buy organizations and became a bit of an angel investor in some sorts and bit of a private equity firm. The one organization I bought it on a Wednesday, and I think I sold it on the following Thursday. And it was a horrible decision. And what it was really about was I was not associated with the core values of the organization at all. So to me, I've been an advocate ever since, and during my period of time with TEC Canada, of associating yourself with like-minded men and women in the room, core values, having that cultural experience, and when you don't feel that, then run. And instead of running, I made the decision to invest because I thought I could, probably had a little ego in my way, and off I went. And that was probably of late, in recent history, that might have been the worst one.
I wanted to end on that because I wanted to ask you what you learned, because that's the positive part out of the whole process.
I stay focused on, association. If you're sitting around the table, do that sanity check of core values. Are you around like-minded individuals? Look, I could get into more pragmatic elements here as well, which would be have a USA. That was one of the areas that we didn't have properly. Have your unanimous shareholder agreement in place. All the structural elements. There's all kinds of things I could throw at you there, but I think as it relates to adversity, if you're going to find solutions to adversity or tackle problems, make sure that you're around that group of men and women that have similar core values.
Great stuff. Hey, Todd, thanks so much for joining us here today. All the best to you and all of your advisors at TEC Canada. Really appreciate you joining us here at the Canadian Beef Industry Conference.
Thank you very much, Shaun. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome stuff. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring our panelists up on the stage here, and they're going to tell us about some of the mistakes that they have made in their businesses. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're listening to RealAg Radio, broadcasting from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference.
Did you know that Pioneer now has a full lineup of Enlist E3 soybeans? Take a look at Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans for the highest yield potential and for the best agronomic package and herbicide trait options. From the lab to the field, Pioneer brand Enlist E3 soybeans are the best in beans, period. Ask your local Pioneer representative about Enlist E3 beans.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
We are broadcasting here today from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. Big thanks to all the partner organizations for having RealAg Radio, Canada's only national ag radio program here on the main stage. It is great to be with you. So many friends and fans in the audience. It really is a pleasure to be here this afternoon. Okay, we're going to move into our panel part of the program. This is going to be a lot of fun, and everybody graciously volunteered to be with us here on the show. Up first, a good friend of mine, Andrea Stroeve-Sawa out of Taber, Alberta. Andrea, how are you?
I'm great, Shaun. It's fun to be here.
Yeah. She says very cautiously. Maybe we'll ask you when we're all done if you're happy to be here. Andrea, tell us about your operation.
I run a 5,000 head feedlot in Taber, Alberta, and we produce compost. We have a yearling grazing operation, and I'm the 4th generation.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Also joining us is Ray Bucknell. Hey, Ray, introduce yourself and tell us about what you do.
Hello, I'm Ray Bucknell. I am the instructor for the Butchery and Charcuterie Management Program at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. So I basically teach people how to take care of all the product that you guys raise. And then outside of that, I have a company called Elevated Butchering Services, which is kind of a combination of on-farm slaughter, which has been really busy, and then another aspect of the company, which has been consulting for producers like yourselves and small to medium-sized meat processors.
I love charcuterie. I will tell you that.
Yeah,
right
that's what
now.
I was going to bring. Now that I saw that Todd brought a gift, I was like, I should have brought a whole charcuterie board up here. We could have been snacking. Can you eat on the radio?
Then we'd have to have wine, and then it would just we'd get off track.
Sounds excellent.
It would just be a runaway. So, but hey, great stuff. Great. I'm interested in hearing more about that on-farm slaughter business. That's very interesting. Also joining us out of British Columbia, Okanagan Falls. Correct, right? We got Brian Thomas. Brian, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. I also didn't get the present memo, so maybe next time. I'm a 3rd generation rancher in Okanagan Falls. We get a cow-calf outfit there. Where we live, it's sort of turning into the Napa North with all the wineries and stuff, but we also do a compost business with the wineries and stuff. As I say, I'm a 3rd generation. My daughter and her husband and 2 boys also live on the ranch, so we're up to the 5th generation now. So
Brian, share with us. We just heard from Todd Millar, and he was talking about adversity and how the building of character and on the coin, not merely to bear what is necessary but love it, and creating that fire in the belly, and learning from some of that adversity. Talk about. Do you have an example of some adversity that you've gone through in your ranching operation and what that's led to?
Well, I think as anybody that's in the ranching industry, I mean, adversity is a fact of life, I think, for us all. Some of the, I think back, the latest adversities we've had is probably the drought, the fire. Our branch, we were personally just about, minutes away from being burnt out in 2001. So I think a lot of these adversities have made us stronger. And having family there, I have a cousin on the ranch, and him and I, it's mostly just the 2 of us run the ranch with, actually 3, because my son-in-law is on the ranch also, and he's about a 6'4" French-Canadian Korean fellow, and everybody thinks he's our foreign worker. So the adversity is definitely spread around, I think.
Yeah, the fires in British Columbia. I remember you were a guest on our Thursday show on the Farmer Rapid Fire when those fires were getting very, very close to the ranch. And I remember talking to Brian, and he was so calm about it. Like the fire was like within sight, and you had such a calmness about you, which I think a lot of people necessarily maybe wouldn't have. It is your disposition, but you definitely had a calmness to you when real adversity was burning very close.
Yeah. That's right.
Andrea, how about you?
I have made a series of mistakes. There's lots of them. If I think of all of them, I don't know that I can pick one that's like the worst one, because there's some that are worse economically, there's some that are worse maybe are on the people side, and there's some that's worse maybe for the environment. But what I feel like sometimes, I don't know, have you ever played the game Whack-A-Mole?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I feel like sometimes I'm so focused over here putting this fire out that I forget to look over here, and then all of a sudden I have to put this fire out. So the most recent one that I had was I was very busy silaging. I had a staff, my office staff was off. I was planning a 50th anniversary party for the farm, and I kind of trusted that my grazing plan and all the work we had done and we'd focused on the outcome, and I was pretty confident that my employee had like my vision in his head about what that should look like. And I didn't realize until after, when I looked at the outcome, that it actually wasn't exactly what I had in my head. And so we overgrazed in the middle of a drought in a very brittle environment, and it looks bad. And so then you bring in the generational element of that, and my dad takes me out, marches me out there and says, "Now what are you going to do?" So I kind of laughed hearing Ted talk about asking questions. I said, well, I can't go back and change what I did do, but what do we do going forward? How can I change it? So what can we change? What can we do better? What are the opportunities that are going to come out of this? And yeah, but it was really hard to pick one mistake to tell you about, Shaun, because there's a lot.
Well, I know your dad, Blake, pretty good. I can totally envisioning this scenario transpiring in the pasture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, his little heart was broken that I would let that happen.
Yeah.
He was very upset. And he's pretty much retired, except when he's not retired.
It's sort of like, you don't have to listen to me anymore, but, and then provides his advice.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even advice. It's like, this is wrong. So I don't know what you're going to do about it, but this is wrong. So, yeah.
Okay, Ray, I want to hear from you. On-farm slaughter business, you kind of developed out of the pandemic. It seems like a really, really good example of where, there's all this adversity around us, but with adversity also comes opportunity. So talk about how that came together.
Yeah, that was a big one. And, it's... the meat business was a little bit different than farming during the pandemic, and there was difficult parts of it. But I kind of called it the golden time. It got really busy for us. I'm not saying everybody made a ton of cash or anything like that, but there was a lot of opportunity, and that's been one of the biggest things, is how to manage that in the meat business right now. It's supplying people, building the businesses, keeping up to government regulations, helping to change those government regulations to help producers. And the on-farm slaughter was a great example of that, because I know there's a ton of people in this room that maybe they ship their cattle, but there's a whole bunch that want to just keep some at home, finish them. In Alberta right now, we're regulated. We can only kill 6 head on the farm and sell them off the farm. And really, that's kind of a pretty small, ridiculous number, because we all want to be entrepreneurs, and we all want to try and, put a bit more money in our pocket instead of shipping it off to one of the big producers, which is fantastic. Of course, we need those, and that's a big part of our business. But there's also a small part like 4-H cattle, entrepreneurs, the kids that want to do things like that, and put a little money in their pocket. And the online slaughter, the on-farm slaughter, when I started, I figured it'd be a few beef a week, and now it's basically turned into a full-time job, which is really challenging because I already have a full-time job. But it's been neat. Sometimes I feel like in the meat business, and I feel bad saying this in a room full of farmers, because you guys always have a lot of problems, but we kind of go out looking for problems. We go out looking for opportunities. And I've had a lot of producers like yourselves come to me with ideas, and how do we act on these? How do we bring them more in-house? And so we kind of create all these problems for ourselves, but it's really, really rewarding. And the on-farm slaughter has been excellent. We have really strong representation in the province of Alberta, which has been helpful. And we'll move forward with that. There's a big deficiency still in having cattle killed. We were just discussing that before we got on stage. In BC, there's a bunch of small producers that have come online and built their own slaughterhouses. And we're starting to hopefully see some of that happen in Alberta. I'm working with a few clients right now to make that happen. So.
There's adversity that's within our control, or stressful times, big decisions. Do I feed these animals out to fat, or do I sell them, or what do I feed, or what does the ration look like? All that kind of stuff. Those are decisions. You may not make the right decision, but it's your decision. But you identified adversity when it comes to regulatory. That we talk a lot in this industry about regulatory burdens. That is not in our control. Of course, we get to vote, but we're not necessarily, running government. That's something that doesn't change in quick order, even though it would make the most sense possible in our own heads.
Yeah.
Why is this the way it is? We can't, I can't really seize this opportunity in my business because there's all of this regulatory crap in the way.
Yeah.
That can be really stressful.
Yeah, that's it. And one thing that I've come to realize, and not to let anybody off the hook, but it just comes down to resources. Not everybody in government has the time or the energy to focus on that one exact thing that we want that to deal with right now. And obviously I'm biased. I'm going to say, I want a farmer to be able to kill 20 head of beef on his farm every single year, right? And that might be number 15 or 16 down on the list when it comes to what can get done. So it's just about staying on it. It's about staying passionate with it and surrounding ourselves with the right people and keeping everybody on board. Todd talked a lot about accountability, which was great, and he touched on conflict. And one thing that's been really big in my career is like, I feel kind of bad saying this, but it's the conflict of the people that I've worked with, because a lot of them are so unbelievably passionate. We all want the same things, but we have to check in with each other all the time and say, okay, what's the best for the customer, or the best for the client, or what that might be. And
yeah. Brian, how do you do with conflict?
Conflict, well, there's two types of conflict. There's a conflict, I think anyway, it's a conflict with your family and the people that you're with every day, my wife. And there's a conflict with other people, I'll use the government officials as an example. Those are two different kind of conflict that to have. I mean, you have a conflict with your family. It kind of, to me, it lasts a little bit longer, but I think it's a different type of conflict than you're having an argument with somebody that you're trying to get. You want to get your cows out earlier. They want to kick your cows off the range because you're in a drought. Those are two different kinds of conflict, I think, and it's the way you deal with that is, I think we all deal with it differently. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't.
Andrea, how about you?
I kind of was reflecting, listening to Brian talk. I think 10 years ago when I first started, I would avoid conflict. And when Ted talked about like the sweet spot, I would avoid conflict. And then I had a period of time where I would kind of be a little bit hot and I would be on the other side of that. But I think now I've kind of found the sweet spot. And I think that just takes time and confidence and learning how to deal with people. I think we highly underestimate, being in the cattle business, how much we actually have to deal with people. And so I've really tried to get better at my people skills. And I hope I have. Maybe not, I don't know. But that's been something that I've really tried to focus on. And I think we've gotten better at it.
Yeah, wine helps too.
And wine helps too, and a charcuterie board.
And charcuterie boards. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with more here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, broadcasting from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference.
Peter Johnson at WheatPeak, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, broadcasting from the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. We've got a great panel. We got Andrea Stroeve-Sawa, we got Ray Bucknell, and Brian Thomas. Really appreciate them joining us here today. Okay, Brian, let's start with you. A part of being able to push through adversity is the preparation for it potentially happening, and it can be expected or unexpected.
Yep.
How do you prepare?
Actually, lately we've been preparing a lot for the droughts we've been having, and for the fires and stuff. Just to have, like a water tank, full of water, kind of, so you can get on a lot of these disasters that happen in a speedy time and stuff like that. And it's, being prepared is also, like, I was just thinking, one of the things that really gets me in the wintertime is you go out in the morning and you got a pen of 200 cattle standing there looking over the fence at you, and there's no snow on the ground for them to eat or lap up to drink, and your water's froze. I mean, that is one of my biggest concerns, and a screw up on my part most of the time because I didn't leave the water running or something. But I mean, to have 200 head of cattle there looking at you, you're responsible for them. What's plan B, sort of thing? So, and a lot of times that's, when your water, to me, water freezes up, man. The plan B is you better hope for some snow to fall or somebody to show up with a water truck.
Ray, how about you?
Preparation. I guess it would come back to reflecting on things that have happened to me in the past. And, right now I'm sitting up here, right now, maybe in the last 4 days, I feel like I've gotten about 20 hours of sleep. There's just always so much going on. And I'm not a particularly religious man, but one thing I always think about whenever I have a real big load on my plate or I'm dealing with challenges, is one of my favorite sayings is that God will never give you more than you can handle, and, the fact being is that you always have a bit of extra space. There's always a bit of extra, left in the tank. I think it's always good to reflect on mental health. Check in with yourself, talk to friends, talk to family, realize that you're often not the only one dealing with really a really big workload, a lot of stress, and to just reflect that you've always gotten through things before. Adversity is going to happen. Reach out to people that can help you. That was the biggest challenge for me. It still is actually asking for help. I think that there's something in our culture that tells us that we're supposed to be number one all the time, that we're supposed to dig deep and rise to the top. And man, it's so much easier if you do it as a group and you just remove any sort of ego and help other people. That's a big one. And just know that you have the space and the ability to do it, and you're going to come out the other side, and there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be a list. I'm a big list guy, so I'm always writing a list of, hey, what can I check off? And one day I'm going to get to the end of that list, and the reality is that list's never going to end, And why? Because we're here for passion. We're here because we love it, so we're all going to work till we drop dead. So you might as well have that list just keep on going and just realize you got to deal with it.
Unless you're ready on the list, one day I don't want to have a list.
There you go.
Yeah. Andrew, how about you in preparation?
I think the thing for me that I find most challenging, I can make decisions about like the challenges that come day to day, like should we move to the next pasture, or should we change this cattle's ration, and I can make those decisions really easily, but it's the ones that I maybe don't necessarily have total control over that keep me up at night, like are we going to have water next year? Is it going to rain? Are those things I have a really hard time preparing for. So I think I'm going to go back to people again, but I think the thing that I have learned is that if I can prepare my people and have them all aligned with my values and how we are as a team, and not just my staff, but extended to my community and my mentors and the people that I call for help, I think if you can align yourself with those kind of people, we probably face a lot of things together.
I mentioned to everybody that Andrea and I are friends, and when I think about what you just said, there has been several times where we've sat on the deck and had a glass of wine, and Andrea said, "Oh, Shaun, you wouldn't believe how I screwed up this week," right? To me, but that's a part of like having that network and that support group, and just being able to say like, just be honest and open about it. I think it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think it's a good process to go through.
Yeah, I think humility is something, and I hold myself accountable a lot. I make a lot of mistakes, but I'll also own up to them. A lot of them I make, and I think it was more than a glass of wine.
Yeah, it was a bottle. But we will be honest there. Brian, in terms of the when I think of you said you got a bit more moisture this year, but when we think about the ranching community and dealing with drought, it's again in Saskatchewan, it's poor in some areas. We got some spots in BC, definitely not that great. The drought of the past number of years has really put a lot of adversity on stress on a lot of our cow-calf producers, and that adds up. It's pretty concerning.
Yeah. No, I think if you have a drought situation like this, and if you have a plan and some support from your local associations and stuff on a plan B of what to do with your cattle. I know with BC Cattlemen, we've been sourcing feed for our producers just so that they can make the decision: do I go out and buy this feed? Do I take my cattle to the market and take my lumps? The price of beef is pretty good right now, but so is the price of trying to get back into the industry. Who knows what that's going to be in the next couple of years. So I think having a plan B and kind of planning ahead a little bit kind of saves a little bit of the panic attack or anxiety that's happening right away, sort of thing.
Well, and having that trust equity in your family operation to be able to have honest conversations with each other in terms of, okay, here's what the challenge is. What are some ideas, or here's what we got to do to kind of get through this. I think that's an important part.
Yeah, that's a very important part. I mean, I've found out, being with the president of the BC Cattlemen, I have to spend quite a bit of time away from home, sort of thing, and I've learned to rely on other people to kind of keep the business going. And that was probably the hardest part of going to, being the president, is for me anyway, to trust somebody else to run your outfit. You have to. It's a huge deal, because I mean, not only you have your family to look after, you have, you're looking after those cattle that you've got. So it's a big deal, I think.
Yeah, good point. Okay, we're out of time. I told you guys this would go fast. I warned you. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. And Brian's been on the show before on the Farmer Rapid Fire. So Brian, it's great to chat with you again.
Anytime.
And Ray, great to meet you. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this business how it grows. And it sounds like you are just hopping with it.
Yeah, it's a busy time, and so thank you very much for having me on. I really.
What's the name of it?
Elevated Butchering Services.
Elevated Butchering Services. Very, very cool. And Andrea, it's great to see you again, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
Always great, Shaun. Always great.
Okay, if you have any feedback on today's show, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks to everybody here today listening on Rural Radio 147 or on the RealAg Radio podcast, and especially the audience, the delegates here at the Canadian Beef Industry Conference. It was great to be with you here today to do a live recording of RealAg Radio. Thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll of course chat again tomorrow. Cheers everybody.